I have a story which I've raised before about a whistleblower who's been made a criminal because of action taken against him by the then Howard government. I will be returning to that story. It is disgraceful and relates to the lack of security at Sydney Airport and the practice of drug running being conducted through the role of baggage handlers. Now, this public servant, to whom I will soon speak, but not tonight, had written several papers on this issue. They were all ignored by the government. He made his reports public. It prompted the Howard government to take action. They brought an expert from Britain whose examination of concerns raised by the public servant validated his conclusions. In other words, by going public, the public interest was being served by this man, desperate for the truth. He is today a criminal. I will in a later program be speaking to him, but for now, we have the case in the South Australian District Court of one Richard Boyle, a tax office whistleblower. Richard Boyle worked in the tax office's debt recovery division in Adelaide. In 2018, he blew the whistle on aggressive debt recovery tactics being used by the tax office. The issue he publicly raised had widespread circulation, headlines in 2018. In 2019, Richard Boyle was charged with a raft of offences, all documented to give the impression that Boyle and his behaviour were threats to society at large. In Boyle's defence, he sought to rely on the Public Interest Disclosure Act, which is the whistleblowing law for public servants, ostensibly shielding them from a criminal trial. Citing the Public Interest Disclosure Act, Boyle applied for a declaration from the South Australian District Court that he was immune from prosecution. Richard Boyle's matter was before the South Australian District Court this week. The court handed down its decision on Monday. Application for protection under the Public Interest Disclosure Act application unsuccessful. The reasons have been suppressed pending a hearing tomorrow, but the whistleblower Boyle is seeking a declaration that he was immune from prosecution. Repeating, that application was dismissed on Monday. Now, Kieran Pender, a senior law figure at the Human Rights Law Centre, said the court's decision that Boyle's whistleblowing on wrongdoing within the Australian Taxation Office was not covered by the Act shows that the law is utterly broken. These whistleblowing laws were drafted and enacted by the current Attorney-General Mark Dreyfus when he was the Attorney-General in 2013. Dreyfus is now being prevailed upon to intervene to drop the case against Boyle. It should be said, several independent inquiries found that Boyle's concerns were well-founded. Kieran Pender from the Human Rights Law Centre argued, whistleblowers should be protected, not prosecuted, and the Public Interest Disclosure Act was enacted to ensure just that. He said Kieran Pender, that's the decision about this man Boyle, was a major blow for Australian democracy. Now, the point is, here's a public servant who's risked his career and indeed his freedom, they could lock the bloke up, to reveal the greed of the Australian Tax Office in its aggressive debt recovery tactics. Of course, the most famous whistleblower is Julian Assange. As Adam Crichton wrote last year from America, and I quote, the Assange case has sifted out those who genuinely believe individuals have rights from those who think government is a tool to destroy your political enemies. For now, he wrote, Assange's fate appears sealed by inertia, hypocrisy and timidity, unquote. Well, Anthony Albanese is now in power at the pinnacle of government. He is the Prime Minister. When in opposition, Mr Albanese declared that the incarceration in the UK of Julian Assange, pending his extradition to the United States, had gone long enough. In opposition, the now Prime Minister wanted Julian Assange freed. Julian Hill, the federal Labor member of the seat of Bruce, is a member of the bipartisan Bring Julian Assange Home parliamentary group. He said when Mr Albanese was in opposition, quote, I hope one of our first acts of our new cabinet will be to speak up for our fellow citizen and demand the government, the US government that is, drop the shameful prosecution of Julian Assange. Well, the Albanese government was elected on May 21 last year. It's now nearly 12 months. And all we have on the Assange matter is delay.